Well, great to see everyone. I will officially call this meeting to order. So let me start before old business. I just wanted to check if people had a chance to review the minutes. If you did from the two previous meetings, we can approve them now. If not, I'm happy to do it at our next meeting.
I have looked at the minutes from the two previous ones, and I didn't see it on the agenda. I do have an addition for the minutes from last week. So if you're open to that, I'm happy to discuss that.
Okay, would it be easier to just put them on the agenda for next week? Or sorry, for our next for our February meeting, and then just go over all of the minutes then, since I hadn't put it on the agenda, and also if you wanted to make a change.
Well, mine is pretty easy if you want me to go ahead and read it into the minutes today.
Sure, actually, yes, if you'd like to do that. And then just to specify, are we speaking about the January 6th minutes or?
Mine is from January 20th.
Okay.
The meeting we had last week under old business, the voting out space allocation update. And I believe that I said in the minutes when I met with the gentleman from CISA that regarding Napa, he does have more security concerns with Napa than he does with Election Central. He did also say that if Napa becomes a voting site, he will share some mitigating updates and as a way to help us. But I do want that in the minutes, that there are more security concerns about Napa than there are about Election Central.
And can I request that Sherry make that update to the minutes, or do we need to vote on it first?
I was looking to see if Sherry is on here. She may be working with someone. We can request that. And I'm sure she would generously do that for us.
Great. So I'll just officially make that request to Sherry to update the minutes with the update that you just had. And that was for last week's meeting.
Yes.
And then should we wait for that update and approve them next week? Is that okay? I see Tree shaking her head. Yes. Okay. So let's do that for last week's minutes. Can I request a motion to approve the January 6th meeting minutes?
I will make that motion.
Second. Can you hear me?
I heard a second, a quiet one, but
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, and the roll call. Chairperson Rana,
yes.
Clerk Brown,
Yes.
and Board Member Garlitz,
Yes.
and has been approved 3-0.
And at our February meeting, we'll approve the minutes that we just discussed for last week's meeting, as well as hopefully this week's if they're completed in time. Thank you. So we'll move now on to agenda item number 2, old business. And first we have the voting space allocation update from Clerk Brown.
Thank you. I don't have significantly new updates from last week. Still waiting for the reports from the architect and his partner, as well as CISA. The only thing that I would say is that we did get an unusual call from the owners of the storage facility in Ellettsville that someone had contacted them requesting to know what was in our storage site. We are fortunate, incredibly fortunate, that because my office pays the bill, that they told whoever called, and I don't know if it was an innocuous caller or a bad actor, but they told that person, we will not share anything with you. You do not pay the space for this. And so those are the kinds of concerns that I have with respect to where things are, who's in control of that. And so I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, that I did learn of that call. And just make sure that it is in the record that I have concerns about that.
And I understand that could be a potential security concern as well.
Absolutely. I mean, at this very moment in time, I have absolutely no idea who placed that call or why. And they just wanted to know what was in there.
Interesting.
Well, thank you for letting us know about that. And I assume if they get any further calls, they'll let us know as well if it doesn't come from our office.
They have been incredibly generous to us. We appreciate the opportunity to work with them. We have saved the county a little bit of money. I mean, you don't want to have to pay out any more money than you have to, but I believe that the deal that we have with this storage facility is that we pay for 11 months, but we get 12 months. So we get a month free for having, for placing our business with them. And she was incredibly generous to give us a call and give us the heads up that that outreach had occurred. So I feel confident that until we can consolidate and get everything under one roof, that they would be just as professional, just as phenomenal about making sure that we have the most up-to-date information on what's going on out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's, I'd like to move to agenda item 2, but let me ask, or 2B, let me just ask if there's any discussion on item A. Okay, so let's move to item 2B on the agenda, which is discussion on clerk's proposal for the 2022 satellite voting. And Clerk Brown, I listed you first, and then to follow with Board Member Garlitz.
Okay, thank you. So as I looked back at the minutes, I mean, I feel like they very accurately capture my perspective on everything. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I'm certainly excited to hear Member Garlitz's response, or, the responsivity from the proposed sites so that we can continue this discussion. As I had mentioned last week, we really do have to begin to take an official perspective on the satellites so that we can get going, because early voting will blink and it'll be early voting. Yay.
And I know we had lots of homework for everyone. So I guess, Clerk Brown, did you have more to add, or should I turn it over to the—
I do not have any more to add. I was out of the office in Indianapolis for the legislative conference. I look forward at some point following the session to update the board on what bills have passed after they've passed out of both houses as they impact us. Right now, clerks are sitting in a fairly good position with respect to election request, but that could change. The bills are about to switch houses, and so language that we requested not be in bills, they could be added back. We just don't know yet, but a very good conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update. Okay, so I will turn it over to you now, Board Member Garlitz, for your update.
All right. Thank you. I want to thank you guys, everyone, for trusting me to get this done. I was hot on the case Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day it was. We concluded our 17-hour-long meeting. I was immediately in touch via email with all 5 prospective sites. We obviously did get to speak with Greg late in the meeting there regarding some of the questions, the outstanding questions we had with Napa. And I think we've adequately answered everything with respect to that building. So that evening, following the meeting, I got emails out and I called every single one of the sites. I did only hear back in some way, shape, or form from 4 of them. Monroe County, Ellisville Christian, Southside, and Eastview. City Church, I've not heard back from on either. Eastview said, although I did send them an email, I can't remember if it was a email on Facebook or from their website, but I believe I did share the form email with Karen and Tree. I don't remember who I shared it with, but and I sent that out to everyone, but they claimed they didn't have the email. So I did speak with him, he's the new pastor down there as of, I believe, January of 2021. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is, and I got in touch with 4 sites. Bad news is none of them at this moment, 2 of them, Ellisville Christian and Monroe County Fairgrounds, cannot commit to anything in any way, shape, or form because of either A, board, or B, elders. Completely understandable. That makes perfect sense. That said, both had, all 4 of the ones I did get in touch with had quite serious concerns with the time allocation, as it's 8 weeks, and they valid concerns, albeit, but they had one of the common questions I got or that I received was, will you be able to tear down and set up nightly, or tear down nightly, set up every morning? And in response from Tree, that doesn't seem like it makes much sense, understandably, both from the cost standpoint and just from the physical, the time allocation of it, that doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. So Southside was very accommodating. They were more than willing to do basically whatever we needed. They have noted that they had some side rooms that we could utilize, but they would like access to that on a nightly basis so that we would still be required to move our machines and lock them up in a closet within that building. So it seems as if all 4 available sites would require that. Again, have not confirmed that with 3, but that was kind of what they were alluding. And then just that time commitment. So we really don't have any firm commitment, but just from 1. So that's kind of where we stand. That's where we're at. Both Monroe County and Ellisville Christian have assured me that they are working on getting answers. But as a 1:15 today, we don't have anything firm.
Was City Church on that list, sir? I apologize if I stepped on you.
No, you didn't. City Church was the one that I didn't hear back from. I called multiple times and I emailed. I followed up with calls on Monday and yesterday, and I didn't hear from, I actually called back Eastview as well, and I haven't heard back from him. I was driving when we spoke the first time, and I know that he was very accommodating and willing to work with us. I just cannot, I was driving, so wasn't able to take notes. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I know Southside and Eastview were both available in some way, shape, or form, with the caveat that we would have to break down and set up on a daily basis, just for use of their own building. And Ellisville Christian, the gentleman I spoke with there, did make the same comment. He said no matter what the elders say, he's 98.9% positive that there would be a daily requirement to set up and break down.
If I may ask, those were the suggestions that we thought of. Did you have any, as you made those calls and we were thinking about satellites, are there any more remote places in Monroe County that you would feel as comfortable or more comfortable with as prospective satellites?
No, I mean, I think my personal opinion is geographically they're wonderful sites. I mean, I think they make sense logistic wise for people to get to them, and they're all accommodating in terms of ADA and all that good stuff. We can utilize the spaces. I think 2 or 3, I know one we use during election day already as a site, and I think it may be a couple of them. I could be wrong on that, but so they're familiar with that. And So no, I don't have any additional suggestions. That said, I don't know that we have time to have the additional suggestions either. That's what scares me.
Agreed. And I think I've said on a previous meeting, by the time I was looking at places that had to look at places that we actually use on election day, I think I told you that it had been recommended that we not use places that we use. I kind of ran out of options and had to start thinking about some things that, at least, as you said earlier, we already know are ADA compliant. We already have history with them. And so perhaps they would be generous and allow us to use those, for a little bit more time than election day. I bring all of that up to say, I really am out of options to recommend to the board if we cannot make these work.
Yeah, and just as a side comment, Clerk Brown, I would like to speak into the record. I think you have more than done your due diligence in trying to make this work. As I sit here right now, I think the time on the clock is running out within like 10 minutes. And I think we do need to make a decision. I think we all agree on that. But I would like to make it abundantly clear that my perspective and reading back in old minutes and looking back at old videos and just in conversations with various people, I think you've done more than your due diligence in trying to accommodate the needs of everyone involved. But I do think that it's important we make a decision, and I do have a motion in respect to that that I would put forward for us to make a decision on. And I just don't think we have any more time to wait. We've been given pretty firm conditions from Greg that were like, hey, you need to get something done. And I have some ideas of how to speed that process and potentially, but that's just one person. That's just me. I don't know if I'm the right answer, but I certainly have at this point an answer, but I think you've done everything you possibly can. So again, I want to make that clear.
I just want to reinforce that as well. Actually, I've been really impressed by not only all the work that you've done to Clerk Brown to put together the satellite locations, but also, we've gotten this really extensive information on ADA compliance and things like that, which is really important to all of us, I think, to just make sure that voting is as accessible as possible. So I really appreciate all of that as well.
You're very kind. Thank you.
So with that said, I don't, after hearing everything, if you would allow me the floor, after hearing everything last week and our extensive discussion on everything and hearing from multiple parties involved, I think with every decision in every form of leadership, from, where a broom closet's going to be up to where someone's going to vote, and all of the different levels of importance in between, you're always going to make someone unhappy. It's just simply impossible to please everyone. But I do think we have decisions to make, and I would like to put forward a motion that we utilize Napa as the sole in-person voting spot for early voting for both primary and general, with the accommodations being made in terms of security. The ballot room build out that I spoke of last week, I did kind of have an idea in the interim that we can utilize the upstairs as long as Greg can get us some stairs built. So I think that would work so that you guys wouldn't have to trek ballots back and forth. And then utilize the Johnson building for the military, mail-in, and all those other things, administrative duties that we spoke about last week. And I would like to make that motion with the caveat to reiterate that this is not ideal. This is the best solution at the time. And according to not only our own people in Monroe County, who with boots on the ground and all of their professional opinions, the federal government, the state government, fellow clerks have all stated that the one roof idea is where we need to head. And I will continue to push for that in every way, shape, or form. In fact, I've gone out on my own and started looking simply on our GIS on what properties the redevelopment commission for Bloomington might own that they might want, if they're not doing anything with, that they might be able to give up for an amount of time. So I'm just starting to do initial research on that, but I agree that we need to get it under one roof. So that is my motion. I think that's the best solution we have at the time.
Are we going to have discussion on your motion or?
Yes,
That's
I
not
would-
up to me. That's not up to me.
Motion and to open it up for discussion.
Okay, so thank you first for your very kind words. I appreciate them. I feel I would be remiss if I did not continue to address my concerns about voter confusion. And so because in previous minutes, we had already talked about allocating the north showers for the mail-in ballots. And because of my concern that voters will show up at Election Central expecting to vote early, some of them will be perfectly fine if there is a line and can go over to Napa, not very far away. I continue to be concerned about my older and disabled voters and then having to turn them away and say, we're not doing early voting at Election Central. I am hopeful that if we're not going to do the additional satellites in the more rural parts that put you closer to the more rural parts of Monroe County, that we can at least have those two sites, the Napa, which is not my deal, but we're getting to the same page now, and Election Central, so that if you show up at either one of those, you're guaranteed to be able to vote without being turned away. And that's my part of the discussion.
I have a question as well to follow up on that. It sounds to me that one of the things that was very helpful when Showers was used as a satellite location was just that it was an opportunity to collect information, right? To see both how many people used it, what the experience was, and how much it effectively cost at the end of the day, given the number of people who actually voted there. So I see this as our upcoming election as an opportunity to do the same thing, right? To collect information on who uses what, where, we all hope that turnout will increase, where the increases are, what days, that kind of thing. So number one, I just wanted to make sure that that was correct, that we'd be kind of gathering all that information at whichever locations we use for the upcoming election. And then part of the reason I was saying that, because it also does make sense to me, if you think it's possible to do it, to have both sides have early voting, or at least the option of voting at Election Central, because I do agree that people associate that spot with voting and will be coming there. But I don't want to greatly increase costs or anything like that. So I just wanted to put that out there as a question as well for feedback.
So as I was saying last week, and my team has made very clear to me, we are going to have something else to take the pressure off of Election Central. That is very clear. And I can put my head on the pillow at night that I tried to do everything to get it to make it more accessible to rural voters. I've been very clear about my concerns about Napa, but I think we're at a place where we have a fait accompli, and we're not going to have any options other than to use Napa. It's disheartening for me, but again, I'm to the place where we can make anything work for 2022. And then my caveat would be, except turning down Election Central because of the voter confusion concern.
What does that look like for staffing and expense if we do have both of them? I was, the only reason I said is the sole spot was just because if we moved things over to consolidate the administrative side of things, and where people didn't have to go physically vote, if we consolidated into Johnson, we would have administrative staff, military, absentee, mail-in, all that good stuff under one roof, and then the in-person under another. That was just the only reason I made that motion specifically was the idea of the consolidation and the stress on staffing and or finances. But if we can, I mean, if everyone involved thinks that that's still the best route, I'm happy to amend my motion with respect to that. That's not what I heard last week. So that's the only reason I made it as I did.
So what we had talked about was the strain on staff if we tried to have those 4 satellites. Now we're only talking about one other than Election Central. I guess it's worth it to me to not have the voter confusion of people who are accustomed to coming to the Johnson Hardware and then having to redirect them to another facility.
Yeah, I guess that was part of my concern as well. I'm not sure I clearly phrased it when I was talking about the experience at Showers, right? But my understanding was that Showers was an additional satellite location
It was.
for early voting, and it just wasn't utilized all that much, which makes sense because it was just directly across the street. And I'm wondering if we could have the best of both worlds. Actually, is what I'm thinking about. In that we consolidate as much as we can in Election Central, and then have an early voting satellite at Napa. I mean, it's further away than Showers. It'll be a facility, where maybe we can move people through quicker if there's lines. Because I'm thinking about the goal of increasing turnout as much as possible, or that we hope that turnout will increase as much as possible. And we just want as many people to be able to vote as possible, but also to have as many people vote as quickly and efficiently and, inexpensively as possible. And I'm just a little bit worried about, like, if we were sitting here thinking, based on our last experience with Showers, if we decided to not have Election Central and just have Showers, we might inadvertently reduce turnout, right?
Do you mean not have Election Central and just have Napa?
Right. I just meant if we were basing it on the last time and said, well, this is what happened. We had a lot of people at Election Central, not many at Showers. And if we were to go ahead with Showers, we would think we were depressing turnout possibly, right? And so I wanted to avoid that implication for this cycle and say, well, because we haven't tested out Napa, right? We just don't know. My thought is, as I think Donovan, you're saying the same thing as well, that because of the location and parking and centrality of it, probably a lot more people will go to Napa than to Showers. So, so I'm not as worried as I would be if we were proposing Showers, right? But I was just kind of interested, because we don't know for sure, right? Whether people, will do all the publicity and all of the information dissemination that we had talked about to let people know about Napa. And I've no doubt everybody will do the best job possible with all of that. But I'm wondering if we could have the best of both worlds, as I said, by having the satellite location that gives us more space, plus maintaining at least something at Election Central for the people who are just going to show up there, despite all efforts at,
That's what I am suggesting. I only wanted to say one thing that I heard you say, and maybe I misunderstood what you meant when you said something about consolidating as much as we could at Election Central, which publicly how I feel about that. The reason we were able to do more at Election Central is in 2020 is because the neighbors who share that space with us had the privilege to work from home. So we got to use that extra space. I am no Dr. Fauci. I have no idea what the pandemic is going to look like as we approach the May and November elections. I have no information, unless my team knows something that they haven't shared. I have no information that we are going to be able to use that bottom floor as we did in 2020. So until or unless we are given the option to consolidate an Election Central, we're not going to have that in 2020. We're going to have to consider something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I see that Tree has her hand raised, so I don't know if you were going to answer some of those questions.
Oh, yes, we don't have the space that we had during the pandemic. Probation had to have that back. If we use Election Central as the main place to vote, what am I going to do with the mailed ballots, the military overseas? Where am I going to put those people?
Okay, so I thought we had talked about this, and I actually thought that you guys were on board with the mail ballots being at the north end of Showers and then leaving the overseas and military ballots. You're breaking news to me if that is not,
No.
if you're not on board with that.
And was that directed to us as board members or to?
Well, that was what we had talked about, leaving. We have to have overseas and military ballots in Election Central. Tree, nod your head if that's right. Okay, but although not ideal, we could make mail ballots work at North Central, Lord of Mercy, that's a school in Indianapolis, North Showers, right? Okay, so go ahead, Tree. It looks like you want to say so. But you're muted.
No, no, I don't want to say anything. But anytime you have more locations, you have more workers. And guys, I'm having trouble finding workers. I can't say that strongly enough.
So that's my major concern. Honestly, the part B of that major concern is the money. The first one is actually physically finding the people to do these. I have no problem. I would like to see, and this is just what I heard from previous, I would like to see just the 2 locations used in some way, shape, or form. That's just from what I heard, and I could be mistaken. But I think that if we do allow Johnson Hardware to still be an in-person voting site, I would argue that it needs to be our absolute goal, and our advertising and public communication and all that should reflect it, that the quote unquote main in-person voting site is not Johnson, that it would be Napa, because I still have this concern about how are we going to, there was a major concern about staffing even 2 places at once if we were doing the, switching every 5 days or whatever it was with the early voting sites. There was serious concern about voting or staffing 5 places. There was major concern about staffing 2 at the same time, which is what I have brought in. That's still my concern, is staffing 2. And so that, while I completely respect and understand the idea that many people have been voting there for X amount of years, I would hope that we could mitigate that through various different forms of communication pre-early voting in both the primary and general, and during, whether that be signs, whether that be, a church bus that would allow us to utilize to even take people down to, I don't know, I'm coming up with ideas off the cuff here, but that would be, that's still my concern. And I don't know if it was a concern for these these exterior satellite facilities, my question would then be, why isn't it a concern to do both with respect to this current proposal?
So we still have people who believe that they vote at the Curry building. We still have that. And we would be moving people who are accustomed, we would be moving our voters twice in the last 10 years, from Curry to Election Central, now Election Central to Napa. I am particularly concerned about my elderly and disabled voters. Thank you for coming all the way down to Election Central. We appreciate it. Now we're going to send you to Napa. I am acknowledging that is a huge thing.
Could we not put signs out that before people even get out of the car, I
We
mean,
do at
Okay.
Curry. We are asked by ASI, who does security for the county buildings, can you please put a sign up? Because they tell us all of the times that people show up expecting to vote. I myself, making those trips in between the Justice Building and Election Central, have either escorted somebody who was able-bodied and could walk that block and a half with me, or I pointed to where all of the election signs are and the candidates are to say, that's actually where you go to vote. You know, because unfortunately, it doesn't happen as often as Curry, but there are people who show up at the Justice Building thinking that they can vote. There are people who show up at the Justice Building thinking that they can drop their absentee ballot in our mailbox. And so until or unless, you know, we are under one roof, we're always going to have a little bit of voter confusion. And I want to mitigate that as much as I can. And so that's why I am advocating for it. And I'm happy to walk back North Showers. I believed truly that I was going on what my team advised me, indicating we had to have that offsite for mail ballots. And so I'm happy to walk it back. If we don't want to use North Showers, that's fine. But that was the information that I went on when I made the recommendation to the board for what we would use that space for.
I see that we have a couple of people with hands raised, and I think it was Karen first and then Tree. And I just wanted to, maybe I'll wait until after your comments, but I just wanted to share a little bit about my experiences with election monitoring and just seeing, you know, what people get confused about and things. But why don't we hear from Karen and then Tree and then back to us.
Oh, okay. So I'm also concerned about the elderly, but Tina was making some calls today to see about our workers, and she was asking me, "What do we have any age limit that we're talking about?" And I mean, she's looking at their birth years of my workers, and one was in 1932. That puts them at 88 years old. I have a friend who has been working and she's 85, and I know her personally. It's like, I can't ask her to work. For one thing, her family won't let her. She's very healthy, very energetic. She still does volunteer work, but her family is concerned about her being out and about with that many people. I mean, she does her grocery shopping and she drives and she does everything. And then we had another one that was older than our 88-year-old one, and she's in her 90s. And you're like, you almost feel funny asking, hey, do you want to come down here and work? I mean, 88 years old, if it was my father-in-law, I'd probably say, you're not going to go out. You don't need to be there 3 times a week or whatever when you're in contact with a lot of people. And this COVID thing has made so much difference with everything. So it's really hard to ask these people if they want to work in conditions that we had before. And that's our elderly here, that we do want to be kind to them too. And I know they can say no, but some of them do feel obligated. They're people pleasers, some of them. And so those are thoughts I have also.
Thank you. And I hope that's motivation for people listening who are under 88 or others to also come forward and vote. So, or volunteer. Tree?
Okay, so if you keep voting at Napa and Election Central, we'll still need the Showers location to do mailed out ballots. That is a job that you have to spread out your work and have D's and R's. You know, you have to have your mixture of people. So I'll still need the Showers building, those 2 rooms. So don't take those away or don't give them up.
Okay. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Just a question. So that's really helpful. So I guess if we're, I just want to lay the different options on the table so we can think about what's best. Are you saying that you will need showers regardless of whether we put everything we can into Napa? Meaning, I guess Donovan's proposal is to put all early voting into Napa and have as much of everything else as possible in election central. And I guess I was asking whether we could do, a combination of what I was calling hopefully the best of both worlds, but I don't know, it might be expensive of both worlds. But,
Well,
which just quickly, mine was to say, could we do something like consolidate as much as possible into election central and open some space for voting there, but have the majority of early voting in Napa, or at least have that be as,
okay, well, Nicole is right. People will come to Election Central to vote. They'll come and they'll argue with you, and that's right there. I have to have a person basically standing at the door saying, no, you don't vote here anymore. If you do all your voting at Napa, then we can do all of our work at Election Central. If we take Napa and do voting and Election Central and do voting, then I will have to move to the Showers location to do my part of the election. Does that make more understanding? And then there's also the question is, how much of Election Central are you going to use for early voting? Because if you use too much, then I still have to worry about overseas and having people in there. Our elderly people this year do not want to sit as close as we had them last time. We're going to get some pushback. We didn't know what we didn't know at the last pandemic, but now that people know, they're not going to want us to cram them together. Last time we put 2 people at one table for the EPO books. I don't think that's going to be possible this year. They're going to want one table all to themselves. So you're also dealing with those questions too. If we keep it Napa, then how do we utilize Election Central? If you have both locations, I'll gladly go to Showers, but you're still going to have to refigure Election Central too.
Does some follow-up, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I don't know if I've muddied the water for you or made you kind of understand all the things that we're grappling with too.
No, I'm seeing moving parts, so I just want some clarity. So what I'm hearing is, even if you utilize Johnson Hardware for the absolute minimum amount of in-person voting, what, 2 polls? Is that the minimum? I don't know. What would be the absolute minimum you could possibly put in there?
Okay, let's say this. Let's say that we put 2 e-poll books at Election Central. We could easily get a line quick.
Well,
because people think they're voting there.
Right. That's not my question is, what's the minimum? 2?
2, because you could have 1 breakdown. Agreed. Which it never happens, but you always have a backup.
So even at the minimum, if you had that in Johnson Building, would you still have to have Showers then?
Yes.
Does utilizing
that's not where your people bunch up. Your people bunch up on the floor voting and then at checkout getting out.
Yeah, no, I get that. Does if that bump out, so we know that even having 2 polls at Johnson, that increases staffing needs, correct?
Yes.
Does bumping you and your responsibilities to Showers increase staffing, or does that just move staffing?
It just moves staffing.
Okay.
Inconvenient, and you open the doors up for security risk. Anytime you're moving stuff.
So we got security. Okay.
I want it all under one roof.
What is the and Nicole, this question goes to you as well. What is election start? Now this doesn't make sense because we have to advertise. What would be, scratch that. Bad question.
So you're making all the points, bless your heart, Mr. Donovan, you're making all the points that I have made since last summer for why we should be under one roof, because depending upon our needs at that time, we can repurpose the people who are working. If the line is longer, we can move more people to in person. If, there's less mail ballots to work on that day, we can repurpose the few employees that we have. Like I said, we have to figure this out for 2022. And I have amazing people. We will work this out for 2022. You're making my point. If we figure out a way to make this work, they're going to continue to make us make this work and kick this can down the road. So I don't mind exploring any motion you have for 2022.
Amen.
I just want to be clear. This is not a can I want to keep kicking down the road. This has gotten beyond the pale.
No, I agree. I think we got to vote today. So hearing all that, I think that I'd be happy to add a bit of a plan B to my motion. And I still think plan A is what I've already stated, because of staffing and because of getting everybody under one roof. While I respect and completely understand the idea of confusion and folks that are going to show up, I think that is something that we're going to have to deal with and mitigate on the fly. I don't want to back anyone into a corner for staffing. So my motion would stand, and it obviously dies if we don't get a second, but my motion would stand. But I am happy to add the plan B, that if we can adequately find staffing and for the minimum amount of polls at Johnson for 2022, I don't like the fact that pushes Tree and her team back to showers. I don't like that at all. But I think that's something that we can keep on the table simply because we have access to showers currently. It's not something that is in addition to what we already have. We have access to Napa and we have access to Johnson. So my motion would stand, and I think we can kind of on the fly, should we be able to get this other, I would much rather spend the time and the resources on advertising, paying a sheriff money to stand at the door and escort folks, on signage, on radio advertisements. I'd rather spend the resources there because I think that A, it would be less expensive to do that than the physical staffing. And B, I think that lends us to the consolidation that we're all looking for, albeit in the short term. I think that really helps where we're going, or what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that if we do get everything under one roof in the larger space, in person wise, and it works, that helps our argument even more. That's kind of where my head's going with this. I am not discounting the fact whatsoever that there will be those people that show up, whether it still be at Johnson or the old place. I can't remember the name of it now that you were saying, but
Hurry.
yeah, I think that's going to happen every year, no matter what. And I think we can only do our best via communication in various types of form, to help decrease that as much as possible. And my gosh, in 2022, I would hope between radio and television and newspaper and social media and all the other things that we could adequately get this message out. So I'm happy to entertain that. Should we understand in a week, in 2 weeks, that we have the staffing? It doesn't sound like we do as of today. Doesn't sound like we will because of the folks that have typically volunteered and some changes that they've made in their personal decisions, that I think we all need to respect as well. And then the idea to get basically under 2 rather than 3 still sounds better to me. So I would leave my motion alone, without any sort of amendment, but with the idea that if we can find a way, I'm happy to change course but it's got to be like yesterday, right? So we've got to know quick, because we've got to have a plan. It seems to me, before we even finish that, Karen and Tree, can you quickly flip that building if you wanted to put 2 in there? I mean, can we make that happen?
What do you mean by flip the building?
Can you flip it from, and I don't mean flip, what I say, can you have a setup in your mind, right? That we've got military overseas, mail in, all that administrative stuff at Johnson, and all in person at Napa. Should we, in a week, in 2 weeks, excuse me, in a month, I don't know what that time frame is, should you find out that you have 50 more people than you originally thought that are going to volunteer and come work for you, could you say, all right, we could put 2 polls at Johnson, I can move my folks to showers? I mean, could we make that happen relatively quickly?
Within 2 hours, yeah. Give me 2 hours. 2
I think-
hours and room at Showers that's not taken for something else.
So we have the room at Showers, we have Napa, we have Johnson. My motion would stand if they tell us we have the workers, which we don't as of today, then we can discuss that. And I'm happy, I will be an avid supporter of that if we have all the folks to do it. I don't have any problem with that.
I just want to add on to your, I was keeping track of the motions, the Plan A and the Plan B. Just to discuss Plan B a little bit further, I guess one of my concerns is, so I've done election monitoring and voter protection in Monroe County as well as elsewhere. And a lot of that is just literally answering people's questions and helping them, right? Because lucky for us, we don't have like, people, doing outright fraud or anything like that, right? At the voting sites, or at least even attempting anything like that. And my feeling from all of that is any little barrier that comes in has a dampening effect on voting, right? So if people have to turn around and do something, even if it's as simple as walking across the street, you will just lose people, right? Or if they have to wait an hour versus 15 minutes, or even half an hour versus 15 minutes, again, people will just walk away and you lose people. And, when I was doing some of that here, there was like, a couple of things where I would see people come to the front entrance of a school, but the voting entrance was the back entrance, and they would just walk away and not go around to the back, right? And most of those people who leave, who, they make all the effort to show up to vote, they go wherever they're supposed to. And even if it's just they didn't know that they were supposed to walk around to the back or something, they leave and they don't come back, right? So they never end up voting. And so I just, when I think about these things, I want to make it as easy as possible. Like, I think one of the big factors in access to voting is just making it as easy and simple as possible, right? And I might think something is really easy, like I'll read the newspaper and see a notice, but there's lots of people who might not, and they're just really busy, or they don't have time to pick up the paper that day, or who knows, right? And so I'm concerned with finding the best. I know I keep talking about the best of both worlds, which like may completely not exist, but I really want to find that because, we have all these different considerations, right? Having, on the one hand, having people come to Election Central and seeing lines might make them turn around and leave, right? On the other hand, if they come to Election Central and are told you have to go down 3 blocks, a lot of them might turn around and leave. And this would be like people who could easily walk the 3 blocks, right? I've just seen it's not necessarily, there's all these things going through people's minds that we don't know about, right? They might have to pick up their kids or do something and we just don't know, right? So I guess that's what I'm concerned about trying to figure out. So we have, one is staffing as an issue, and I think I had slightly misunderstood staffing. I had understood it as to be a big concern if we wanted to have 4 or 5 satellite locations, but I was hoping that 2 locations would be somewhat mitigated. And it sounds like you're all saying you think 1 location, and I'm looking to Tree and Karen to see if this is correct. If you think you can do early voting in 1 location like Napa, you are feeling good that you will have enough workers, but you're worried about 2 locations. Is that, I know we're all worried about 4 or 5 locations, but is that okay? So that's also a concern, but perhaps more doable than the 4 or 5 different locations. Okay. And then, as we said, if we do have early voting at Johnson Hardware, I see your point, Tree, that if people know they can vote there and they see any kind of line at all, they might just turn around and leave and not bother to go down the block. And I don't know if that's better or worse than people thinking they can vote at Johnson Hardware, showing up, realizing they can't, and whether they're going to go down the block. I don't know. There's all these different possibilities, right? Okay. And then it sounds like then we have the goal of consolidating all of our election and voting efforts into 1 building generally, right? And it sounds like we have a choice now between 2 or 3 buildings, right? Depending on how we configure these different sites. And the other worry I would put to that is part of what I was trying to say with that this is an information gathering exercise for us is that if we could see this year how well Napa worked, that might give us more information for 2024, because we're all thinking that whatever we do for 2022 will be temporary and that we want to consolidate and have a single location for 2024, right? And I was just worried about well, what if we move to Napa, then go back to Johnson Hardware, or or is it better to have both locations, see which works best, and see what the different configurations are, and then make a decision for 2024. So that was what I was thinking, and I would just love to hear your thoughts. So this is directed at the board members, at Tree and Karen.
And it is worth noting that if we use Napa as a temporary, as a satellite for this, and then we consolidate, that then you'll have people showing up at Napa when we no longer use that because they didn't see it. I want to reassure both of you that we do advertise. Again, we do own a commercial. We can get on the radio. We utilize the newspapers. We utilize the party chairs. The candidates themselves will advertise because they want to garner votes. So advertising is not something that I think is going to be an issue. The voter confusion is. So the one thing I was kind of kicking around, and I don't know, we have no good options. Every option we consider is going to leave something problematic. Could I meet you in the middle, Mr. Donovan, and say, what if we had 28 days of early voting at Napa, but then the last 2 weeks when people do tend to start, they come out because they don't want to vote too soon, but they don't want to vote too late, that we then open up, as you called it, flip the building on Election Central. That will have allowed us time to get those mail ballots out. It'll be closer to the cutoff time where we don't send ballots out. There's a cutoff time for when you can mail a ballot out, so that we could then have that staff help us at Election Central. Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And would we be able to do that in the middle of, open voting though? Would we be, because I think that still raises the question, do we have, absolutely, I would love to do that if we had the staffing, but what if we don't have the staffing? That continues to be and as we sit, we don't have it. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to push that upon anyone. That's just what I'm hearing. So I would love that more than anything. I think that would be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for voters. I just don't know that we can make it happen.
I see that Tree has a question.
I do. This is not a bad idea, guys. It does have merit, does it not, Karen?
Well, I appreciate you thinking I can come up with something.
I'm very happy. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. The good thing is, I can change, a group of people, we can change Election Central over to a voting place. That's not a bad idea at all, Nicole. And by the time,
in my mind, if go ahead and push every able-bodied voter through Napa in those first 14 of the 28 days, just as we encouraged every able-bodied voter we could to come out and vote early to save Election Day for those who needed to socially distance, that move Napa, market it. This is what we're doing in 2022, and here you go. And then those last two because Travel Board will also have started up, that might take some of the pressure off of Election Central, right? Travel Board going out to the nursing homes and things. So we will.
not really.
Not really.
No, that we don't have that many Travel Board as you're thinking. You're talking about maybe 6 or 8 a day.
Right. We didn't use a lot of, we didn't market Travel Board a lot because of COVID. But we know more now than we did in 2020. And so if somebody is not able to come out of their residence, we can send people there. But there are going to still be those people that show up, and that's just, I'm I'm just nauseous thinking about the fact that, you know, anybody might show up at Election Central and not be able to do something. And I know Tree and Karen know people still show up at Election Central on election day when that is no longer an option because they need to go to their polling site. And we haven't been able to mitigate that despite our advertising and sending out postcards with all of the polling sites. And so if we can flesh that out a little more to make this a little more palatable for me, that would be great.
I'd support that so long as we have the staffing, not even second guessing it.
Yeah, and I would definitely support that as well. And to me, it actually sounds like a little bit more of the more cautious approach because it really gives us the chance to go all out advertising Napa, still have this backup, still kind of see, you know, what turns out when we have the statistics and everything at the end of the day. So
Thank you for thinking for me, Clerk Brown.
All right, if you want to make a new motion. With
I would just amend it to include everything that Clerk Brown just said. I think that's.
I like that. I want the world to work like that. Everything that Clerk Brown just said.
Yes, I think that is a very, very good idea. And I don't, to be clear, I don't think that's a compromise either. I think that's the right approach. So long as we can staff it and we can make it work. The two ladies, Karen and Tree, just said they can make that happen if we've got all the people, and I think that's a great idea.
So say it.
I move to have my motion amended to include everything that Clerk Brown just said.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and roll call. Chairperson Rana,
yes.
Clerk Brown,
Yes.
Member Garlitz.
Yes.
Motion approved, 3-0.
So, okay, just for my edification here, what exactly is the motion? Give it, wrap it up to me one more time.
Just said.
I know, but that's too vague for me.
Motion and Chairwoman Rana and Clerk Brown, please correct me where I'm wrong here, but I'll give you my as concise as possible summation. So motion would be to utilize Napa as the in-person voting site for both the general and the primaries. Should we have adequate staffing, and hopefully we do, the final 2 weeks of both voting sessions, we would also open up the Johnson building. If not, we would keep it as is and kind of go from there. But with everything administratively and mail-in and overseas and all that stuff in Johnson building up until that point, either way. I love it. That sounds awesome.
Me too. And I just want to add also that you have my commitment, all of you have my commitment that I'm going to go out there and try to recruit as many volunteers as possible.
Yes.
And, you know, the people you described earlier have my immense gratitude for the service they're providing. And I really hope that inspires other people to step up. And as I said, I'm going to go out there and try to recruit as many people as possible to help.
So I'm sure that you got the email from Greg Crone about the security needs for the Napa building. I also have an email from my team about what we would need to make security work. I mean, I know we're not ready to recess or anything, but I am going to recommend that we recess and get some kind of doodle poll going so that we can all meet Mr. Crone out there to talk about the security needs for Napa. I think that's all I want to say about that.
I think, Karen has a statement or a question.
Sure. I'm hoping that this will light a fire under the Republicans. I can say that, right? Because I'm going to have a harder time with the Republicans getting more workers. The Democrats they will come through on if I see the history repeat itself, we're going to have more Democrats. And I do know if it actually comes down to it, and I only have Democrats, I can place Democrats in Republican positions. I don't like that. I never have. And I fight against it 100%, but I've had to do it. And so Republicans, I need to get those younger ones out there and get them out, get the volunteers, but they get paid, so it's a paid volunteer situation.
Okay, and there's another thing too. Please do not meet at the Napa building in sufficient numbers to constitute a quorum.
So if we notice the fact that we're meeting and we're coming back together from recess,
I think that would be a county legal question, but if all three of you are together, it's considered to be a quorum. You can't forget about that.
okay, we were all together at Napa to look at the site.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could do it as a public meeting that any member of the public could also join. Is that something that's a possibility? That's what happened before, right? There were just people who were members of the public. And I honestly think that would help with get out the information efforts, right?
Right, we recessed, when we went out to look at the Napa site, we all recessed and we went over from the Zoom meeting to Napa. I guess I feel like the goalposts are moving.
Yeah, but is that a question we can direct to Lee Baker since you posed that statement in the chat? Is it possible that we could do something like have a public meeting at Napa for us to, get a sense of the layout and the questions that we just discussed, but also invite members of the public? I think that would be an excellent way for people to see a voting site and where they could, vote and spread the word on that as well.
Why can't we see everybody that's on this meeting? I didn't even.
We
So-
so panelist,
Right,
and then we have participants who are on the Zoom, but we can't see their videos. But if you look at participants, you can see everyone's names. If you click on participants at the bottom,
Okay.
panelists, which we can see, and then the attendees.
Right,
So-
the attendees can't speak. So even if Mr. Baker is on that listening to us, he can't talk.
I didn't, but I'm saying I didn't even see his box. So I
Oh,
didn't.
now he's on as a panelist, right? He got bumped up, it looks like. So, is that correct, Lee? Can you hear us and speak?
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Great. So I don't know, as you were getting bumped up to the panelist, I don't know if you heard my question, which was, is there a way that we could have a public meeting at the Napa building to discuss the layout and these other issues? Because I think that would be quite useful in getting the word out to the public about voting happening there, and be, I think, an extra helpful way of getting information out.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's actually it's an interesting question, given the location of the proposed public meeting. The meeting would have, if you're going to meet as a body, as a quorum to discuss public business, of course you would have to notice it to the public. The public would be given the ability to attend the meeting and record the meeting. So I suppose if you satisfy those requirements, you're going to satisfy the public access laws.
Well,
I'm
how
trying
about,
to think of your logistics to make sure that you have everything in place to accomplish that properly in that particular forum.
so how about, rather than putting you on the spot in this way,
It's okay, I don't mind.
if we could maybe move to recess at the end of this meeting and then pose to you, what do you think would work in terms of how we would be able to meet and have it as a public meeting, and then you tell us what the requirements would be? Does that work? And then we can.
That's my answer to you right now. As long as you can ensure that people are able to attend and record the meeting if they wish, that is, I think that's fine, as long as we properly notice it. I don't see any issue there. Tree, what do you all do to produce your minutes of your meetings? Do you record them, or is that a challenge for you all?
No, we are recording right now. The minutes are recording right now. We also type them up too.
How would you prepare your minutes from a meeting at the Napa building? They don't have to be verbatim. It's just a recitation of what happened and so forth.
We could do that. We could annotate them, you know what I'm saying? Just make at attendance was,
right.
Yeah.
and then,
I think you could do that, and that would suffice.
Okay.
You,
So-
go ahead.
I'm sorry. The only other thing that I was going to say is someone has dropped into the chat accurately. So Mr. Crone requested to meet regarding security, which is not something that I want to be a part of the public discussion. So I guess for me, I would be willing to stay back after we've met at Napa and talked to Mr. Crone about our security needs after the public has left the
Can't-
meeting.
No, you
Pardon?
Can't have a discussion about security.
I'm talking about me, myself, not a quorum.
Well, 2 is a quorum, but I don't understand. Well, my question is if we're not making any decisions and we're meeting at a potential site to talk about that with the proper entity with the county, I mean, doesn't it only make sense to make sure that we can have that conversation?
I think county legal's already rendered an opinion on that. I'll not add any more on that point.
I guess maybe
I
that's a
don't-
reason to seek. You know, I was thinking of seeking an opinion from the state election board or lawyers, because I would note that I disagree with that opinion. You know, it had sort of circular logic, right? It said you can never discuss implementation of security until you have security first, which means you're never going to have security. You're never going to be able to discuss implementation because you can't discuss security without discussing its implementation, right? So it would go in circles. So if that's actually the case, which, you know, I'm just going to state on the record, I don't think that made sense. That would mean that we can't actually discuss security, right? It has to be, you know, basically ever. So
Yeah,
that out there.
I would add that I agree for what it's worth, although unlike both of you, I'm not an attorney. But I think that it is also doesn't make very much sense logically, but also that it is impossible to adequately discuss securing a building that has adequate security needs if we are not, it would just be impossible if we're not allowed to have that discussion. So I don't know what the answer is. I know that the county has rendered an opinion to us and they have stated their opinion, but they also clearly stated that, you know, we could also, for lack of better terms, do what we needed to do and deal with the perceived consequences. So I think that makes sense. I don't want everyone in the county knowing what we may or may not do with securing that building. I don't think it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense for a bank to advertise what type of vault they have in the back. So I don't think we should either. And I think to reiterate, as I've stated before on multiple public meetings, both the state election officials and the public access counselor have stated contrary opinions to what we're hearing.
Yeah, I would also note that we didn't ask for an opinion. And so number one, my understanding it's advisory only and not binding, as you mentioned, Mr. Garlitz, but also we didn't ask for the opinion. So I'm wondering, you know, to me, it raises the concern that possibly someone else did in a way that to me raises concerns about whether there's, you know, potentially regrettable things going on behind the scenes.
And I'll also just, again, for the record, reiterate, someone has called requesting to know something about a space where we store things that are election related. And at this time, I have no idea if that was an innocuous inquiry or if it was a bad actor.
That's an
And
important note.
I see some statements in the chat. Let me just take a moment. I guess it's a question from Commissioner Githens saying, as a county commissioner, I trust the professionals who work for Monroe County to set up all necessary security. So does the election board need to actually discuss what security measures need to be put into place? I mean, I sort of view that back into the realm of the theoretical, right? Clearly, the drafters of the statute contemplated that people discussing, like election boards setting up voting sites and making decisions regarding voter access would need to discuss security. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to actually draft a provision mentioning that. But I think, we just get back into the circular arguments that are just theoretical and, don't really lead anywhere.
And I guess what I'll also say is I would have to defer to CISA. I mean, the people in terms of election security, with everything that we have going on a national level, I would defer to CISA's recommendations for what we need for security. And again, the gentleman that I met with said that he was willing to give us recommendations for what we need if we were going to use those spaces for elections. Thank
That's
you.
very helpful. No, that's very helpful. And they'd be giving us recommendations, right? They wouldn't be telling us. what to
Yes,
do. So we still have
yes.
to approve the recommendations, right? This is what I meant about this is all getting circular and theoretical. But I guess, but that's really helpful because, we want to defer to their expertise, right, on these issues. So I guess back to next steps. It sounds like that we can move to recess at the end of this session and have a properly noticed public meeting in the Napa building to, talk about the setup and those kinds of things. And there would be minutes provided. And then, I guess as far as the security discussions, we can defer to, I don't even know if they'll have recommendations for us or when, right? And then talk about what to do.
Right. It would likely take a little bit of time. I'll reach back out to him immediately following this meeting. We just drove him by after he had come and looked at the other election spaces. We drove him by Napa on the way back to his car. And that's when he had said there would be more security concerns with Napa than Election Central, but that he would be willing to help. And so I take him at his word that his offer is good.
Okay, thank you. As far as next steps, obviously we can't move to recess and do all of that until we go through the rest of our agenda, but I want to make sure that we've all had our questions answered, the discussion we needed for these items.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
Thank
Nice. Everybody else nodding their heads. Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I'm glad we were able to take a major step forward today. So I'll move now to agenda item number 3, new business. And for 3A, I'll turn it over to Karen Wheeler for ballot placement of offices.
Okay, so in reading, I discovered that, I'll just read it to you. In both the primary and general election, at the discretion of the county election board, prosecuting attorney, clerk of the circuit court, and county offices may be placed on the ballot card before county judicial offices. So the state gives me the lineup of how everything is, what order, and how they're placed on the ballot. But you, as the county election board, can reverse those or put the ones I just said before the judges. So I didn't know what you wanted to do. And I also sent you the Indiana code for all of that. So we can leave it the way it is, how it has been, or I can move them.
I have no opinion.
And all I was gonna add to that was do you have any recommendation? I mean, is there any reason to change, or if you had any recommendation about anything that?
It really wouldn't matter to me, other than the fact right now when I'm setting the ballot up that I would like to know, like now, going back, you can just see that they're all in the same order. So if I do it the same way, not a lot of people go back and look at the ballots, but I do. And there are people who do. So I don't see it as much either way. If your name's on the ballot, certain people are going to be put up first. Sometimes that's good, but it depends on how it ends up on the ballot. You could be at the bottom and somebody else could be at the top because of how it goes up. So I don't know.
Okay, I mean, so I guess my major concern was just to make sure that there hadn't been any issue with the way it was before.
No,
And in that case, I would defer to you and do what we had before as well. And I don't know if Clerk Brown wants to weigh in, and then we could do a motion for.
I think the fairest thing to do would be to look at the order from the exact same election 4 years ago and stick with that precedent.
okay, I will do that then. Oh, do we need a motion?
So moved, which is a more proper way of saying, do what Nicole Brown just said.
I love that. I love that.
All right. Do we have,
Can I second it? I second the motion.
okay, roll call. Chairperson Rana,
Yes.
Clerk Brown,
Yes.
Board Member Garlitz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move to the next item, which is public comments. And as in the past, anyone who's on the line and would like to make a public comment, you can use the raise hand function on the screen. And you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. And if for some reason you're not able to use the raise hand, you can put a note in the chat saying you'd like to make a public comment. So let me just quickly take a moment after that just to scan all the participants and make sure that no one has their hand raised, or to see if anyone does have their hand raised. Let's see. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. So having seen no raised hands or notes about wanting to make a public comment, I'll just quickly note that there was a question in the chat if someone could drop the citation for ballot order into the chat. Is that something, Karen, that you have handy right now?
Dave, I can just send, oh, yeah, I can do that. I think it's always more than one.
I'll keep talking, so I'll give you a moment to get it and put it into the chat. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we didn't have any public comments. So I want to make a note that our next county election board meeting that we have scheduled is February 3rd at 1 p.m. And my understanding is that we'll be using this Zoom link as well. You know, we discussed possibly having another meeting. I assume that would be after February 3rd, but that would be noticed for the public as well. And Karen, did that give you enough time? Perfect. We're perfectly.
Yes, actually, but I have about 3 more. And I also want to make a comment to, we passed old business.
Yes, we had passed old business, but we're on new business if you wanted to raise anything else.
Okay, I just really wanted to say that I did send Tron Enright, Randolph, and Matt Smith an email stating that they were late and don't do that again. So I thought pretty harsh, sort of, maybe not too bad. Okay, and then with the Hoosiers for Freedom, that pact, I am giving Phyllis Finley, the treasurer, the information that she needs to be able to close it out and finalize it, and we can be done with that pack.
Thank you so much for handling both of those items.
Sure.
I do see there's a question in the chat. Will there be a school board referendum item on the ballot this fall or spring? And the answer,
I dropped in the chat that I was unaware of a referendum at this time.
okay. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, I'll just say again, our next regularly scheduled election board meeting is February 3rd at 2 p.m. I will request a motion to recess.
I will make the motion to recess.
Second. Second, if you didn't hear me, sorry.
Sorry. Roll call. Chairperson Rana,
Yes.
Clerk Brown,
Yes.
Board Member Garlitz.
Yes.
Motion approved, 3-0.
Much everyone for all your hard work today, and we'll see you soon. And thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.